This is the Ben Mulroney Show, but this is the time on our Friday episode where we bring on the best political panel in the country. Please welcome to the show Chris Chapin, political commentator, managing principal of Upstream Strategy, Sabrina Maddeaux, political commentator, columnist and director of comms at Global Public Affairs, and Sharan Kaur, political strategist and former deputy chief to the Minister of Finance. All three of you, I say happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Ben.
Okay, I want to talk about a piece of legislation that I don't think anybody asked for, and I want to get your take on it. This citizenship by descent legislation. Sharan, I want to go to you first because we have a social cohesion issue in this country. We have a problem with people rallying around Canadian ideals, and it is forcing us. It is loosening the fabric of this country. We've been watching it happen in real time over the past 10 years. And I don't remember anybody running on this. I don't remember ever hearing the words citizenship by descent. And by the way, we'll remind people it means that citizenship will be afforded to you if your parents have a passport, so you don't even have to live in this country. So to me, this does nothing to deal with an actual problem that we have and could potentially create new problems. So I'd love to get your insights as to where this came from and why we need it.
So it's not something new globally. Other countries have done this. I believe, like we've seen in the UK. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does the US not do this as well, where you can get citizenship or like a passport based on your parents?
Maybe, but I don't know that that is. I don't know that that's a justification or a reason to say other countries have done. Other countries have social cohesion issues as well. A lot of them in Europe. So I don't know that that's the. I'm trying to understand where this came from and why I feel like I hadn't heard about this at all.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a bit of a new one. This is not something that we heard in any platform. Like this has always been a discussion point amongst people like, hey, if your parent was born there, you should be able to be considered a citizen. Do I think that there was some major need to do this right now? No, I don't believe so. Is this some sort of effort to promote some sort of Canadian brand? Maybe it is. Do I think it's going to cause a mass amount of issues? I don't think so, because if we think about it from the perspective of how quickly someone can be granted it, it's like we're not talking about immigration or access to the country within 5 years or whatever the case may be. Someone has to be born and then they go up and then they get access to it. So I don't think this is going to be an issue in the medium to semi-long term when it comes to immigration. I think this is just part of a larger strategy, maybe around population growth, access to Canada. Listen, is this something I would have done right away? Probably not. It's kind of random out of nowhere, but I don't see it being as a complete downside.
No. Listen, I'm sure there are positives that could come out of something like this, but Sabrina, to me, we were told we're in a crisis, all hands on deck. How is this piece of legislation that is not germane to the subject of the crisis that we're in? How is this one of the first pieces of legislation to come out of the Mark Carney government?
Yeah, this seems to be completely at odds with the current movement on immigration and reining that in to make it more sustainable, especially when it's not something that was in the platform or something that was run on. So it's very confusing to see this be one of the new Carney government's big first acts. And there are potential negatives. I mean, the discussion around social cohesion and prioritizing, high quality immigrants who are truly committed to Canada, and whether that's committing to our social fabric, our cultural values, or our economy. The thing about this legislation is the parent actually only had to have spent a total of 3 years cumulatively in Canada throughout their lifetime. So we're not talking about parents who are here a decade or more or 20 years, like 3 years over a lifetime, not even consecutively.
Yeah.
That's a pretty low barrier to entry, right? And commitment to Canada. And then on top of that, this is going to open up a whole new floodgate when it comes to processing citizenship applications. And our system's already collapsing and struggling under its weight. So there's concerns there about what this does to the system overall. And they haven't even gamed out the numbers. They're saying this adds an unknown number of potentially new Canadian citizens. And we already can't keep track of how many people are here. So it's confusing, and it doesn't seem very well thought out or in line with what Canada needs immigration wise right now. Yeah,
Chris, a Canadian passport is one of the most cherished passports on the planet. It is sought after. Everybody wants one. And now it seems like we're diluting the value of it further. I'm not trying to be overly critical. My brain genuinely cannot compute the logic.
Mine neither. You know, I can totally understand that there are probably some Canadians where they don't fit through this, and this loophole, changing this loophole, will help them get Canadian citizenship that they've long sought after. But, you know, that's just such a small window. And I know I'm going to get Sharon's back up against the wall, but I think Sabrina makes a great point. I just don't understand the priority of this decision. This government didn't want to bring forward a budget in this legislative session, but this brought forward this legislation out of what I can only assume is absolutely nowhere. So for a government that, you know, came in talking about a crisis, you know, wanting to address, you know, priorities that really matter to Canadians, this seems the farthest from it.
All right, and I'm going to put this next story out there, and each one of you is going to get 1 minute to address it. The PBO has said the rubber's meeting the road, and the spending promises of Mark Carney will not be able to be. We won't be able to square that circle solely based on reductions in the public service. And so I want to go to you first, Sharan, because you know Mark Carney. And had this criticism come from, say, Pierre Poilievre, that would be one thing. But this is another smart guy in the room, smart like Mark Carney smart. So what do you think his reaction is going to be to this criticism by the PBO?
So, and I'm going to say this with the utmost respect to the PBO, having spent 5 years at finance dealing with the PBO doesn't always get it right. And I think that it's fair for them to have their criticism, but they might think the math ain't mathing, but I would say the PBO does not always get it right. Now, I am one of those strong believers that, if you were to ask me, and I'll probably get bombarded by the Public Service Union for saying this, we can cut the public service probably by 50%. There is so much wasted space, probably even more. There is just so much wasted space and people who are just kind of, I know we're waiting for attrition. I don't think the PBO is completely right. I think there will be other things that are cut, maybe some sort of programs that are not essential, that are not directly impacting people. But I think that the PBO likely doesn't have the full numbers there. But you know what? I am here to cut the public service.
All right, Sharon. I'm looking at Chris's face, and I think he wants to jump right in here. So you go next.
Sharon's starting to sound more conservative than I am. She's cutting the public service and questioning legislative bodies, independent authorities of the legislature. So no, I couldn't agree more. We certainly could go far beyond attrition. I think it was something Stephen Harper did, as a fundamental pillar of the way he governed for almost a decade he was in power, was putting a cap on the public servants and letting attrition do what it does best. But we need to do more. And I think that's where the PBO is right to question.
All right, Sabrina, the last word is to you on this.
It'll be a true test of Carney's leadership over the next little while, whether he's open to dialogue and addressing criticism when it comes to economic issues, because that's where he feels he's the expert. That's his wheelhouse. And he's been a little bit prickly there so far. Absolutely, public service needs to be addressed. One caution I want to say, though, is we've seen there have been layoffs over the last year, and they've mostly targeted the youngest workers in the federal service. Yeah. So I'm cautious of moving to shut an entire generation out of government policymaking and public service work. So I think that there needs to be some serious thought put into this issue.
Well, Sabrina, if the idea is last one in, first one out, then let's cut the $26 billion in consultants. If the public service is way too big, according to Sharan, right, then let's get rid of the consultants. We already have more people doing the jobs than we need. So that would be my humble recommendation. Sharan, what do you think of the consultants?
I always found it really weird that consultants get brought in to do certain things, because why don't we just get that talent in-house?
Right. I know.
And I was there, and there are times that you do need consultants in, but sometimes consultants are just glorified spreadsheet and PowerPoint folks. And I think that maybe it's time, this is when we look at, hey, the type of people we're bringing into government, maybe they need to have some of the same qualities these consultants do. But
Sharan,
you don't need to bring consultants.
You got to be around the table, because you're making a lot of sense. You're making a lot of sense to me today. All right, don't go anywhere. We've got more with my incredible political panel after the break, right here on the Ben Mulroney Show.
People leave my administration and they love us, and then at some point they miss it so badly, and some of them embrace it and some of them actually become hostile. I don't know what it is. It's sort of Trump derangement syndrome, I guess they call it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's not me. It's you. Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show. Welcome back to our This Week in Politics panel. And of course, we're talking about the battle royale over the big, beautiful bill between Elon Musk and Donald Trump that just spiraled into a place I don't think anybody anticipated, but we were all here for it. Let's start with you, Sabrina. We all knew the divorce was going to be ugly. If there was going to be a divorce, it was going to be bad. I don't think any of us predicted the insanity that ensued. If you had to speculate, and just full disclosure, you do have to speculate, what's your best theory as to what sparked this whole thing?
Yeah, the divorce was inevitable. Like you said, you have two very powerful men, two wealthy men with big egos. And I think Musk, after donating so much to the campaign, expected a very large level of influence within the Trump administration. And he appeared to have that for the first little bit. But then things started shifting, and the Trump team seemed to be backing off a little bit, and bills were being passed that he didn't agree with. And here we are. And you know what? It has been entertaining so far, and I'm sure people are enjoying watching it. My concern is that this could eventually have unintended consequences, where if Trump decides to, take some sort of vengeful action against Elon and pass some sort of legislation or an executive order that then has broader impacts, whether that's something targeted at X that ends up impacting freedom of speech, or in the EV market, opening up to China. There are a lot of ways this could go. So I'm not fully happy about it.
No, it does have real world implications when the richest man in the world and the most powerful man in the world are fighting. There's some spillover that can affect the everyday person. Sharan, what's your thought? I want you to speculate too. What do you think sparked this? What do you think is really behind it? And what do you think the path forward is?
Well, for starters, the next time anyone says that women shouldn't be in politics because they're too emotional, I will remind everybody of what happened yesterday, because, oh, my goodness. What sparked this? I don't think there's one specific thing. We've heard rumors for a while now that there was disagreements between Musk and Trump's cabinet and some of the decisions being made. And we have to remember, President Donald Trump turns on people as quickly as humanly possible. And he went from parading Elon's Tesla outside of the White House, buying one himself, to basically them going nuclear on each other. And I got to say, this is a good indication of how crazy politics have gone in the U.S. But I'm kind of with Sabrina on the what are the consequences going to be overall for everybody. And but to be honest, I think everyone was kind of collectively, everyone from every direction collectively sitting with their popcorn yesterday, just saying, oh my God, I am here for the drama.
Yeah. Well, and I'll take issue with just one thing you said, Sharan, and I'll pass it over to Chris, is yes, Donald Trump typically goes at people, but he was quiet for almost 3 full days, and that is unlike him. So that is a question that I've got. Chris, what do you make of all this? Oh, I think you're on mute, my friend.
Well, sorry about that, Ben. I think we saw this coming. It had been.
Did we really see this coming?
No, I do think it was inevitable. And I think the honest truth here is that, you just look at what Elon Musk was brought in to do and what he thought he was being brought in to do. Sabrina mentioned it. He spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get the president elected. And we all thought Doge was a joke, but I think it's something that Elon Musk has spoken about at length for years, is cutting the size of the government in the United States. And he got in there, and I would think was very excited about what they were doing. And then he got frozen out, just like any, I think there's a lot in the tech sector that think you can apply how the tech world works to government until you learn how government works. And it isn't smooth and it isn't easy and it is a mess. Yeah. And cutting the trillions of dollars, it went from the goal was to cut $2 trillion or $2 billion worth of government services. And the next thing all they could find was $200 million worth of government deficiencies. Yeah. So I think that frustration boiling over into this, the big, beautiful bill that spends trillions of dollars, I think just put him at odds with the president. Yeah. And at the end of the day, then the egos set in, and one man happens to be far richer than the other, and one man happens to be far more powerful than the other. And they each have their own warring social media platforms that they can run to and put out whatever they want. And that's what wound up happening yesterday. And it made for, incredibly entertaining reading material.
All right. Well, I want to turn our attention to the seat of provincial government in Ontario, Queen's Park. And I want to talk about Decorum because the leader of the opposition, Marit Stiles, had this to say on the floor of Queen's Park.
It is not a question of if. It is a question of when. When will this premier grow a pair and demand the resignation of his?
I will ask the member to withdraw. I will ask the leader of the opposition to withdraw.
Withdraw.
Okay, so let's call things what they are. We're all smart enough to know they workshopped that expression. They thought about it, they wrote it down, they tried it out, they decided they wanted to do that in our seat of government. My contention, and I'll start with you, Chris, is that is beneath our seat of power. If you have been entrusted by the voter to represent our interests in that esteemed hall, then we and that place deserves far better than that. What do you think?
Yes, Ben, it does deserve far better than that. Unfortunately, that's been gone in that building and on Parliament Hill for a very long time. And you're absolutely right. You know, having written questions for question period, that was workshopped, it was rehearsed, it was practiced, and they decided to go ahead with it. I know some are criticizing, you know, if Doug Ford had said that, you know, the media would be losing their mind. It's just silly. Queen's Park question period across the country has just become political theater. And so, you know, it's not surprising to me that it's sunk to this level. I fully agree. I think, you know, there's Decorum's left that building, you know, far too long ago, and it needs to come back. I just don't know how we ever get there.
And look, Sabrina, I'll come to you because this is the NDP. They hold themselves up as sort of the conscience of whatever body they are in. And as a progressive voice, that was a decidedly regressive thing to say.
It was, and it's disappointing, and I think it's beneath them. It's certainly a byproduct of politics for social media these days, and question period is all about getting the clips. But the NDP has a leader who's a really solid communicator. Yeah. Like Mar can get these clips and bring issues to the table without resorting to this. So I think it actually undermines her capabilities, and hopefully they transition to, I think, more decorum and, you know, playing into the fact that she can talk about the issues in a mature way going forward.
And, you know, this dovetails into a thought I had a few weeks ago, Sharan, with Pierre Poilievre sort of trying to reimagine how he gets back into the House of Commons and asking himself why he lost the election. Perhaps one of the conversations he's having with himself is, do I present as a more like the adult in the room when I come back to the House of Commons instead of being the guy who gets those clips? Maybe I'm going to be the guy who stands as the prime minister in waiting. So perhaps we might see more decorum in Ottawa.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've been saying this for a very long time, especially recently with everyone kind of complaining about the fact that the House is going to rise soon federally and they should be working. I say working with quotation marks because they will be working through the summer. But I have been a very strong believer that question period, whether it's provincial or municipal, and you know what, even council municipally, but provincially and federally, they have become theatrics, purely theatrics. Nothing gets done. And when it comes to Merit, I don't know why she needed to degrade herself to this. I tell people to grow up hair all the time, but I'm not sitting in the House of Commons or in a legislator. And like, yeah, grow up hair, people, but you don't need to take that into a space that is meant to be professional. People are sick and tired of this rhetoric of hatefulness. And I think you're right. Like Pierre Poilievre probably walked away saying, you know what, maybe people didn't like that I'm not a mean guy, but I'm this confrontational guy saying whatever I want to say type of stuff. And people want some decorum. And that's why I say question period is a waste of time.
Yeah, if there is one place where we should have it in an ideal world, it is, like I said, the seats and halls of power. But you know, I may be a little too naive to hope for that in the future. I was hoping this would be a great panel. You guys delivered. Thank you very much. I hope each and every one of you has a terrific weekend. Thank you so much for joining us, and come on back anytime you want. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.